Good evening. Welcome along to the second half of the season in Season 14 RPL Tier 2. I'm your commentator, Ryan Searles. It is great to have you all join us. I am by myself tonight, and we're here for round 6 of the season. Only 9 drivers are qualifying tonight in Japan. 2 of them have qualifying bans. George is serving his last. Jake Bandy was put in the lineups late. This is going to be a fun event tonight. We've got Danny and Redfire coming in late. We have a shorter grid tonight. It's very unfortunate to see that Tier 2 is lacking in attendance, but you know what that means? It makes the race more interesting for guys like Zora, Trat Racer, Mentaki, and even Torn Penguin, who are all in midfield and horrible cars. But nonetheless, it's great to have you all here. Welcome along, chat. Welcome along, viewers. Welcome along to those of you watching this event back as well. I'm glad to be here. So last week in Monza, we had a second win in a row by George Alp Williams. George Alp Williams came from a qualifying ban to win once again. And it's not the only time he did it. He did it the previous week in Spain, battling Redfire Tiger for the victory. And interestingly enough, Redfire Tiger, for that same victory, was being battled in Monza. The interesting thing is that Redfire didn't lose out in the stewards room this time for any points, so he did actually take back the championship lead over Vodka, who is now second. And George, who was 58 points back from the championship lead, is now only 28 with half a season remaining. So a lot can happen, as we know, and a lot will happen. But tonight is where that starts. I want to give a big congrats, by the way, to our Tier 3 winner of Uri, who won yesterday. Our extreme was cut short. My apologies for that. We're hoping the same thing does not happen today. If it does, that would be very, very unfortunate. With that being said, though, 11 drivers here tonight. We'll go over the grid in just a moment while we watch some drivers on board with, well, we'll go on board with someone who's going to start a lap or is finishing one. I don't really know who's on a lap. Shoot. Gagi is not on a lap. Jackson Traeger's not. Lennon's pitting. Manikalki. Okay, so we'll go on board with Polo. This is a very small grid, to say the least, and we only have 9 qualifying. Yeah, we need some better attendance in Tier 2, that's for sure. But as I said, Uri, congrats on the win yesterday, my friend. Goatley finished second. The highest an American has finished in RPL Tier 3. And Neski for Mercedes was on the podium. Crazy race in the midfield. A lot of controversy between SV and Vade and Optical Merc versus Ferrari Academy. Usually it's Ferrari Academy versus Red Bull and Ferrari versus Red Bull, but this time it was Ferrari Academy versus Mercedes Academy. Whether it was the battle for P4, whether it was the battle for P14, Zora, who's in this race tonight on late call up to drive in the RB, he got into an incident with Valkyrie, who was in the Haas. Zora was in the Williams. Nonetheless, Polo God is starting a lap. In the meantime, while Polo God starts a lap, we're going to go over the championship standings. Let me pull up Twitch chat, by the way, for those of you watching this event. Glad to have you here once again, folks. Well, yeah, with that said, here's what things look like after 5 rounds. We have Redfire Tiger leading. He will be attending this event, but he'll be late. We have Vodka, second in the championship, 12 points back. George F. Williams is 28 points back. And Blue Gagi, who currently sits on pole position, is 38 points back in the championship. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a very big chance we can get a first-time pole sitter tonight in RPL. Look at the guys who are qualifying. We have Mentaki, never on pole. Lennon has been on pole in Tier 3 and Tier 2. But not since returning to Tier 2. Torn Penguin, who's raced a few times the last few weeks in Tier 1, got the call up to race Haas tonight. We have Trat Racer, who I don't think he's ever been on pole. Polo God has been on pole, but that came back in the F1 and F2 days. Zora's never been on pole. Wavy Knife, he's in this qualifying session yet to go out. And Blue Gagi, who excelled really well in this Japan race 2 seasons ago in his debut at Red Bull. FX7 Danny's here. Redfire Tiger's here. Welcome along, boys. I know you're late, halfway into the session, but it's great to have you. That's now 13 drivers on our grid. Since the Merc and Ferrari driver joined us. Let's go over our championship standings with that being said on the constructor side. Welcome along to chat, Jake Bandy. I'm glad to have you here joining us. So, no championships can be claimed this early in the season. However, Mercedes are working themselves much more closer to that. They sit 63 points ahead of Ferrari. McLaren are 70 points back, only 7 behind Ferrari. Red Bull are 4th. They're 7 points behind McLaren, 77 back from the lead. Very close 2nd to 4th, but they are not anywhere close to our leaders in Mercedes. And that will be updated too, because please, someone besides myself, remind Owen to update this. The championship standings, there should be more points for Mercedes because Lennon raced in Mercedes last week. Owen had put him in the Aston, so the 6 or 8 points that Lennon scored, I believe, in Monza went to Aston, yet they need to be going to Mercedes. So that lead will be even bigger when things are all said and done. And by the way, here's our teams fighting for the back end of the field, 8th through 10th. Alpine, Sauber, and Williams, all within 7 points from 8th to 10th. Let's see how they shape up. Right now, we're going to go on board with Zora, who's on a lap. Zora raced in the Tier 3 race yesterday in the Williams and spoke about not liking that car a lot. And he turned down an offer to get Williams full-time next season just to stay as a Red Bull reserve. I don't know if that's the smartest move or not. You definitely want to be on the grid for sure in RPL. You don't want to be kept off the grid because, oh, he went a little wide. I'm sure he'll complete the lap nonetheless because he doesn't have a time on the board. But with that being said, I'm sure you want to keep yourself on this grid. You don't want to have any chance to take yourself off this RPL grid. Even if it's a car you don't like, I would rather be on the grid than rather not be. And for Zora's case, he asked me to give him some screen time. Here's some screen time today. He got some yesterday for sure. Got in that crash with Valkyrie. Had some movement further back on the restart. So he had a very quiet race yesterday. He was doing fine up until the Valkyrie incident. But Zora's return to RPL has been much better than I thought it was for him. He's definitely not been on the pace, but he has been doing everything he can to improve and be a much cleaner racer compared to before. Very wide at the Casio triangle, but he will get a time on our board for the RB. Remember, these guys are top 7 in the constructors, so they need to have a good result tonight. He is 6th fastest. We have Torn Penguin into the Casio triangle. He's made a few Tier 1 starts for Sauber, the reserve driver has, but he just invalidated right there. We go to Mintucky now, who's a 10th up and could be stealing 3rd place on our grid. Remember, last week in the Haas, she was doing very well. And through the 2nd sector, she's doing even better. Look at this. This could be a pole position time by the Sauber driver for a 2nd week in a row, continuing to improve and continuing to show us what she is capable of. Crossing the line now is Mintucky. Last week it was a good qualifying for Haas. This week for Sauber, it is right off of the front row, just behind Jackson Traeger. We have a Sauber in P3 right now on our grid. Wavy Knife exits the final corner and will go to the front row. Wavy Knife with an amazing lap. We've got Polo God on a lap, and he's now backing off. FX7 Danny is on a lap. This is his first. Let's ride on board with him. He almost went wide there at the 2nd Degna. We have some drivers and viewers in chat giving us some of their opinions. Zora is consuming his ERS faster than my dog eats, says Goatley. Well, I will say, if he figures out the ERS, he could be definitely higher on a grid. Mintucky needs a raise, says Jake Bandy. I would not disagree with that. She should definitely be in that Ferrari soon enough. Look at FX7 Danny losing the rear right there. FX7 Danny Redfire both come from the same league entering RPL, by the way, doing this event prior. So just an FYI on that aspect. Goggy wavy front row we need. Well, we're only just off that. Look at this. Jackson Traeger took back pole position moments ago from Goggy. 2/10 Goggy will need to improve on to get that back. FX7 Danny crosses, and he'll be only 5th fastest. He's behind teammate Mintucky. Polo God invalidated, I believe. Or no, he backed off. Red Fire is the one who invalidated. Excuse me right there. Mintucky obviously improved herself by 5/10 right there on that lap. She would have been behind FX7 Danny and Lennon if it weren't for that improvement. We've got Polo God, I believe, starting another lap here. He's recharging and going for another one. Is Lennon or whoever that is doing the same? Who is that in the final sector? That's Red Fire. Red Fire starting one, too. Look at how close these two drivers are. Red Fire's actually coming back into the pits. Going to go for a fresh set, and he'll be one and done. Polo God has set a time on our board, but that was a lap he backed off on. He is charging up, going for this one. That's a Red Bull out of the pit lane, making sure to not get in the way of the Ferrari, but we're right on board now. Turn 1, turn 2. Now we go to the S section. It's so tricky on pad here in this area. But Polo God, his second full-time race in the Ferrari is happening now. And what is he going to do with this? He definitely needs a good result coming off of a race in Monza where he probably felt like he should have been on the podium. He felt like he was not aggressive enough. And if he's aggressive enough tonight in Japan, that could put him on the podium for the first time in Tier 2 in 5 seasons. This has been the season where drivers have broke long droughts that they've had in their RPL career. Could this be the night where Polo God returns to the RPL podium for the first time in over a year? We'll have to find out, but regardless, he's coming through. Now to the final bits. And interestingly enough for Polo God, look at this. Rain in 15 minutes. This is going to be the time where we're going to get rain soon, so drivers are trying to get their final laps in. We do have rain 30 minutes into the race, by the way, for those of you just joining us. Nonetheless, Polo God is improving, and Polo God will need to find this time in the last sector to get a better lap than Zora, Penguin, Lennon, and even his teammate Danny. What can the Irishman do? It's National Vodka Day. They're famous for that in Ireland, but he's ran out of fuel, Polo has. Nonetheless, although he ran out of fuel, he is faster than Zora. He is 8th fastest. This may be it from the Irish driver. This is not a good qualifying. Very disappointing there. Penguin is now coming to complete a lap. We've not seen a lot of him. He's been at the back of the field in the Sauber. He's not been bad at all, but there's so much you can only do with that Sauber, as we know, unless you're just that fast and maybe in the wrong tier. But nonetheless, his first start in Tier 2 comes tonight. Let's see what he does here. He was improving a little bit. He should be getting himself out of Lennon. I don't expect much more. But a car that did really well in qualifying could be doing very well tonight here. The Haas comes across the line, sets it fifth fastest. That's now 3 different Academy cars, 4th through 6th here. And on the final laps, we've got Blue Goggy out on track. Jackson Traeger is trying to get out of the way, but mowing some lawn in the process. Wavy Knife is starting a lap. This is the quest for pole position. Red Fire Tiger is out on track, and of course he wants to go for pole position. He has 1 lap to do it, the championship leader. We'll see how he fares. Jackson Traeger invalidated his outlap. Blue Goggy backed off of this one. We're now looking at Wavy Knife. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but Wavy Knife is going for pole position. Mentelke calls it quits on her lap. It might be a 4th place qualifying in the Kick Sauber. That'd be a really good effort from her. I believe we had Valkyrie a few seasons ago here in Japan. I believe it was the season 11 race. She didn't get to qualify because this was full qualifying back then. She crashed with teammate Invade that day, but she ended up coming back and bouncing back for a 5th place finish. Could we see Mentelke back up that qualifying in the race? We'll have to find out. Wavy Knife is improving in the first sector, on the second lap here. He locked up going in the hairpin, but he's got to find time before getting to 130R here. And if he can do that, Wavy Knife could steal pole position away from the 2 Red Bull boys. Blue Goggy is starting another lap. Jackson Traeger will be starting a lap. And as the yellow flags are out, I want to get to see the time. How much time do we have left before the checkered flag waves? Will Wavy Knife find any improvement in this second sector? He's getting a little slipstream from the Ferrari. He's only just up. He could be stealing this front row away from Blue Goggy. Now, we go to Casio Triangle for one last time. Riding on board the Aston, he slips and slides on the curb. Is that going to hamper him and lose him time? He's trying to use all that battery to make it up. Across the line, Wavy Knife lost it all in the last sector, and he did not improve. Blue Goggy is up by 16 thousandths in the first sector, and our pole sitter, Jackson Traeger, invalidated. 31.6 from Red Fire in the first sector. Our pole sitter did a 31.7. So Red Fire is on for pole position right now. Checkered flag is waving. Strat Racer's on a lap. Red Fire's on a lap. Polo God couldn't get to the checkered flag in time. Zora beat him. Lennon is our next car across the line. 4/10 of an improvement through the middle sector. Now to the line. He goes 5th fastest. So Lennon, the driver who started off in Tier 3 this season, into Tier 2 with that promotion. Racing for Mercedes tonight will start in the top 5 as things stand. Blue Goggy is up by a 10th. This is the track he made his debut with Red Bull at. Can he go pole? Crossing the line now. He goes back to the front row and stays there. Only just. Red Fire Tiger crosses and only just misses out on the front row. He made a mistake on the lap, avoiding a chance at stealing that front row. Strat Racer is 11th. Now, our pole sitter Jackson Traeger is going to cross, but he will have to fend off Danny. He's the only one who can beat him. Danny crosses. Danny's only 4th, and just in time. Look at this. The rain has started to hit. Jackson Traeger is on pole position for an 8th time in RPL Tier 2. And it's a Red Bull front row lockout. Blue Goggy, it's his best starting spot in RPL. He is 2nd, and it's our first front row lockout from the Red Bull boys multiple times in a season since season 9. Excuse me, season 10, we had Hunted and JTK get 1-2 twice. First front row lockout since season 10, and with multiple times from a single team. Specifically this one. Red Fire, championship leader, he's 3rd. Danny comes from that same league they both raced prior. That's 4th place for him. Wavy Knife and Mentelki make up this 3rd row, and very good qualifying efforts from them too. Wavy Knife to put himself in contention of pole position is definitely a big surprise, but the fact that he almost capitalized on it, if it weren't for those mistakes, could have been very big. Here is your qualifying order. We have Jackson Traeger. By the way, he got a 5-place grid penalty, so Blue Goggy will inherit pole position. Wow. I did not realize that. I missed whatever happened to Jackson Traeger. My apologies. That is on my end. But nonetheless, we got Blue Goggy, Red Fire Tiger, Danny, Wavy, Mentelki, then Jackson Traeger, Lennon, Penguin, Zora, and Polo got round out of the top 10. SV has joined us for the race, but he'll be starting at the back with George Up Williams and Jake Bandy, who have qualifying bans. Wavy Knife believes his Delta is glitched. He would have got Blue Goggy. Goatley making some comments in the chat about the Kick Sauber. Yeah, the Kick Sauber Mentelki did really well on that lap. I'm interested to see if she can do better with that car, because she said in one of the chats that she doesn't even like this car. She hates it so much. The fact that she's up there with not liking the car shows that there are some people who deserve better cars in RPL, and this comes from the conversation that happened a while ago with Reese Dainty in the Red Bull and Gecko in the Ferrari. People felt like they were in the cars that they shouldn't have been. There's drivers in that academy who deserve better, and maybe we're seeing that again inside the Ferrari academy right now with poor qualifyings from Paulo God and Danny. Danny didn't do too bad. Danny got a lap in at the end, but before that it was not looking good. To be fair, him and Red Fire come from different leagues. But anyway, 10 seconds until we get to Lights Out. We have rain 30 minutes in. Give us your last minute predictions for Lights Out. And here we come. The 5 red lights are kicking on in RPL Japan for the second half of the season. It's lights out, and away we go. We saw a little bit of wheel spin off the line, but nonetheless, Blue Goggy has got an amazing start. He's clearing both cars behind, who go off. Both of them are off. Danny and Red Fire, the championship leader, is off. Both of them are to last now. That is major championship implications for Red Fire and even Danny, who needs to help Ferrari get some major points. Up to second, it's Wavy Knife, Blue Goggy and Wavy, who collided in this race 2 seasons ago. They run 1-2. And look at this, an amazing start from George. Once again, up 5 places. Mentelki is on the podium right now. Jackson Traeger, who had the 5th place, is also up 2. We've got some movement now into the hairpin. We got some movement. Jackson Traeger collides with the Sauber. Jackson Traeger went from a long way back, and the dive bomb didn't work out. But look who's gained places from all that. George Up Williams is up 7 places. Big losers on the start. Red Fire, Danny, and Jackson Traeger, to no surprise, but we've got some contact here. Strat Racer's off, and Strat Racer's in the wall. He had an incident with Zora. Both them came together, and Strat Racer's missing part of his wing. Here we go to 130R. Red Fire Tiger's trying to gain some lost ground on the inside of the RB. Now look at this. This is so tight. Zora's going to go for the send on Polo. Polo locks the rears, and the two Ferraris ghost inside of one another. That was almost a big collision, and they're still colliding. Danny's off. Danny's off. And Danny has had trouble for the second time on lap 1. Red Fire Tiger, who had trouble on lap 1, is now trying to bounce back. He's going to the inside. He's making the move on Polo God. Side by side we go. What a chaotic start to this race. Polo God is slipping and sliding and losing rear grip. 4 of the major cars, 4 of the top cars are down here on lap 1. Polo God has lost sight of the train up there. Red Fire had trouble. Jackson Traeger had trouble down at the hairpin. And Danny collided with Red Fire. Blue Goggy leads this race and is looking for a first tier 2 win tonight as Strat Racer lags out. Could tonight be the night? Nonetheless, he's going to have to fend off a tier 3 champion right now. George Up Williams is coming quick. He's going on the outside of Lennon into Spoon Curve while Lennon hangs on. Wavy Knife right now, remember, he runs second, and Goggy is on the hard tires. He's on the hards. 2nd through 7th are on the mediums. Trad Racer's been disqualified. I don't know what the game did to him there whenever he lagged out, but that's hampered him. Here we go for a move into 130R. We got wheel-to-wheel action. Jackson Traeger's on the inside. There's contact with Polo as we get to Casio Triangle. Will they figure it out? Jackson Traeger's through. Polo slots in behind, and Red Fire has to settle for less. We have fastest laps being traded. We have moves now being made at the back of this field. Red Fire Tiger is trying to make sure that George Up Williams does not get closer to him in the championship tonight by limiting the damage. Red Fire and Polo are through. Here is Danny on the back of Jackson Traeger. Blue Goggy is out front and having to deal with the pressure. We know what this kid is like under pressure. There's only one time he's prevailed. And right now, we've got side-by-side action at the end of the SS. Polo God went through. Now Jackson Traeger is back to the inside, and Jackson Traeger reclaims the place. All this fighting is going to lose them DRS to Red Fire Tiger, who needs to gain time, and Jackson Traeger had a big moment. He lost the rear. Look at this. Here comes Danny to the inside. Danny goes ahead. Danny now is trying to get back past his teammate, who he almost collided with on lap 1. We've got yellow flags. That is Trat's disqualified car, but nonetheless, Zora still runs this train. So does Jackson Traeger. Danny. Now Polo God leads this train because Red Fire Tiger has pulled out DRS, but Polo God is trying to boost to get back to him. Switching to the front of this field, Wavy and Mentoki, 2 previous teammates, run on the podium right now. That is big for their teams. An Aston and a Sauber. We saw Sauber get a podium here back in Season 11 when they were Alfa Romeo. Here is Jake Bandy stealing the fastest lap. George Up Williams seeing in front of him a move be made. Lennon goes to the inside of Mentoki. Wheel-to-wheel action. Does George put his nose in there? Yes, he does. Side by side, George and Mentoki go. This is going to get ugly to the S's. Will they keep it alive? Yes, they do. George Up Williams makes the overtake, and that's trouble for the 3rd time today from FX7 Danny. This is just a nightmare for Ferrari. Oh, this is so not fun if you're a Ferrari, but George made the move on Mentoki and crucially is ahead. Now, Wavy Knife is getting eaten alive. Here comes Wavy Knife side by side with George. Lennon got him. George got him as well. They are all trying to hunt down Blue Goggy for this race lead, who's on the hard compound tires. And just remember, if you did not join us at the start of the hour, it is going to be raining 30 minutes into this race. That's why you see the drivers on hard and medium tires. Nobody chose the soft compound tire to start with. 1.7 is that gap. Lennon is behind. Goggy is ahead. And Goggy should just be in conservation mode here, but still push to keep these guys out of DRS right now. Look at the battling, still continuing. We got yellow flags. Zora has looped it around at the exit of Spoon Curve. The battling continues on the lap 5 of this race. Blue Gagi is still leading, but behind that, George Williams is on the charge. He's already up to 2nd place now. George gets Lennon. Further behind that, Polo God has Jackson Traeger for company. None of them are above 20% on the battery, and they've both had just nightmare starts. You know who that start really helped, though? Mercedes. I know Red Fire had gotten into trouble, but there's no constructor besides McLaren up here with both cars. And Red Fire, I thought he did pull DRS, but he clearly has not kept it that way. He is only 8/10 ahead of Polo God. And with that being said, he's right behind Torn Penguin, who will be getting a penalty, as it has been reported already. He readied up before the host. Side by side, Jackson Traeger loses it, goes into Polo. There's contact. They're both off. Polo God into the gravel. Jackson Traeger is facing the wrong way and was facing the wrong way. Now he's going. But that was more trouble at the back of the field, which is just seeing chaos continue to erupt. And Jackson Traeger is still not going. Did he reset the track is the question. He has damage on the end plate. Could this be the end of Jackson Traeger's race? Blue Gagi leads this race still, and he had a major lockup there down at Casio Triangle. George has cut the gap down from 1.7 to 1.5 now, but George has set the fastest lap. He's got Lennon for company, by the way, who has better ERS than him. Remember, Torn Penguin readied up before the host. He'll be getting a penalty. Jake Bandy is the one in front of him right now. Looks like everything's starting to calm down, but nonetheless, Jackson Traeger's in, and yeah, he's not happy. He is not happy. And can you blame him? Can you blame him? He's had an absolute horrid season, the Season 12 champion. We would have expected a lot better from him. Some his own faults, some not. Jackson Traeger right there during that incident. He's our 2nd driver we've lost, but he clipped the curb and went into Polo, and it's a nightmare for Ferrari. Ferrari are probably having their worst race yet this season. I can't believe I'm saying that. Nonetheless, the gap is 1.2 between George and Gagi. It is, once again, just like Spain. The two run 1-2 are Gagi and Groggy. Jake Bandy has been overtaken before 130R by Torn Penguin. And just an FYI, for those of you wondering, yes, the rain will be coming 30 minutes in, but that is probably why Gagi chose to go on the hard tire, in case the rain doesn't come as early as expected. Right now, everybody is still remaining in the DRS train, and I was going to say that Lennon could kind of interfere with, you know, Groggy catching Gagi by overtaking him, but he's not anywhere close. And now that the fact of the matter is Groggy is in DRS of Gagi, well, that may not be the case anymore, to where Lennon can kind of interfere with that. Also, Lennon's doing a great job running his race, trying to return to the Tier 2 podium. Remember, his last podium comes a long while ago. You know, we spoke about at the top of the hour, a lot of drivers breaking streaks in this tier with, you know, podiums. For Lennon's case, I think Lennon's been on the podium only a few times. Let me just double check this. I feel like he's been on the podium more. Where's Lennon's name? Season 10 was his first one. Got Jake Bandy getting Torn Penguin back, by the way, but nonetheless, I feel like Lennon's had... Okay, he's had 3 podiums, that's right. Okay, so his last podium comes back in Season 11. My apologies. Nonetheless, it'd be a 3-season drought being broken. And Gagi has one in F2. That's the only race I was speaking about earlier that Gagi had dealt with the pressure quite well. Besides that, he really hasn't dealt with the pressure quite well when in a top spot. Red Fire has got Torn Penguin for 7th, so he's limiting the damage. But nonetheless, George Williams, who started last, can he get to first here at the end of lap 8? He's boosting. Here he comes to get the race lead. Side by side as we get to turn 1, George Williams cruises past and takes the lead of the race. Blue Gagi can't do nothing about it. He's just going to sit behind the McLaren and maybe just find a way to stay with him and maybe fight this later on. Remember, if George's tires wear so much when this rain does hit, Goggy will be on a better strategy. Goggy is on the hards. Remember who's also on the hards? Red Fire and Polo. If George manages his mediums well, I mean, this will definitely hurt Goggy more than it will hurt Groggy. Nonetheless, Zora is into the pit lane for RB. And we had Mentucky and Wavy both lose sight of that train. They're running 4th and 5th right now. Must be said, Mentucky is doing a great job for Kicksauber. Wavy is doing a great job for Aston Martin. Both them and bad cars up in the top 5. Remember, this has been a chaotic start, the first 7 laps. We had a Red Bull out. We had both Ferraris have a collision. We had the Mercedes, a Red Fire, have an off for the start from 2nd place. Jackson Traeger talking about in the driver's chat being killed of all motivation, but Blue Goggy is not losing sight of George. Look at this. He is 3/10 behind our race leader. Yesterday, we saw the Red Bull and McLaren of Turbo and Uri end up trading the lead multiple times. Do we see the same thing happen here? Blue Goggy uses some ERS. George sets the fastest lap, and down to turn 1, Blue Goggy is reeling him in. Does he go for the lead down at turn 1? It'd be very risky. He's going to stay in behind the McLaren and wait another day. And I think he's trying to play the ERS game, especially with the tires they both are on. Wavy still is ahead of Mentucky. Jake Bandy is still ahead of Red Fire while things stand. If we take the current running order and put it to the championship standings between George and Red Fire, this would mean that George has now put the gap down in the championship to 8 points with Red Fire Tiger, meaning that over the span of the last month, George has brought the gap from 58 points to 8 points. George could be winning a championship in 2 different tiers here. That would be wild to start off this game cycle. And, you know, you'd think it'd be F2 in one of our F1 cards tiers, but that's not the case. It'd be F2, or excuse me, F1 Tier 3, and maybe F1 Tier 2, but George runs wide. George runs wide from the lead, and Blue Goggy is there to pounce. Remember, Lennon is not far off of this train. He's using battery to get closer and remain in DRS range. Goggy is keeping the pressure on Groggy. It's very interesting to see the fact that Goggy is on the hard tires, the worst tires, and still keep pace with George in the Red Bull. Everyone talked about for the longest time Goggy having inconsistent races with the Red Bull team. He's in the Red Bull tonight as, you know, Jackson Traeger's teammate is not here, as we know. So we shall see, with that being said, if Goggy can keep this going with the pressure, coping with that. And Wavy is off. Wavy is spun right in front of Mentucky, and he's down the order, down to 7th. That is troubling for Wavy, who had a really good run. Look at that, right in the path of the Haas. His car unghosted. That could have been troubling. Polo God is in for mediums. Polo God was tired of the hard tires and got off of them. Now that means Red Fire and Goggy are the only ones on hard tires. George made a mistake down at the hairpin. Blue Goggy reclaims the lead on lap 10 of this race. We spoke about at the top of the hour, this being the place where Blue Goggy made his Red Bull debut back in Season 12. He got on the podium. He had trouble on lap 1 as well. He led after lap 1 and had the race lead taken back from him by George Williams, who clawed his way through from last place. I know we're not halfway yet, but you got to ask the question with the consistency problems of Blue Goggy, is today the day where it does happen for the first time in Tier 2? Or is this another one that is false hope? George is reeling the Red Bull in and backs off to save ERS in the braking zone. Look at our race leader is on none when it comes to that battery. He is saving a lot of energy too. Jake Bandy got passed by Red Fire Tiger moments ago, and that means with George having the lead taken from him, Red Fire down to 5th, this gap would now be about, what, 17, 19 points between George and Red Fire? That's the difference when Red Fire takes a place and George has a place taken from him. I think after this is all said and done, I think Gagi will be credited with the pole position. I think Jackson Traeger's 5th place ended up costing him an 8th pole technically. I mean, I remember back in Singapore we had this happen where the pole sitter had a 5th place, and we gave it to the 2nd place driver who started on pole in the race, Owen. I'm interested to see if Gagi gets credited with that for the stat. It would be his first pole in RPL, but if he's on this kind of momentum with having a first pole and then leading the race in the first, 7 laps, you gotta wonder, for Gagi's case, has he fixed these consistency issues at Red Bull, or is this just a good track for him? Mentelke is in, Jake Bandy is in, and with that being said, we should be seeing our medium runners come in very soon. George is on the mediums, Lennon is, so is Wavy, Danny, and Penguin. Penguin will be facing a penalty, no doubt about it, for rating up before the host. That has already been submitted to the stewards. Owen did it as soon as the race went green, but nonetheless, J&T, Jackson Traeger, said he's going to be dropping racing for a while after his very poor start in DNF. I feel bad for the Season 12 champion. It was this track that he fended off Blue Gaki for a 2nd place to make it a 1-2 at Ferrari, and maybe I thought today he'd change things around, but he's only had the 2 podiums this season. He had a podium last week in Monza. And Polo God has spun, and that's his rear wing gone. Polo God in trouble after just setting the fastest lap of the race. And we might be seeing a retirement at the end of this lap with that rear wing being gone. Into the pit lane comes Lennon for Mercedes. You've got to make sure you don't speed, and he just timed that perfectly. Now, 1, 2, 3 in this race are the drivers who were all up front in the Spain race. Polo God is around again, and this is a nightmare for Ferrari. He has just said on the radio he cannot continue. So this is going to be the end of the Ferrari's race here, as he'll be going to the pit lane this time to retire, it looks like. That is so unfortunate for the driver who returned here in Japan 3 seasons ago, running under the Alpine Academy. He had a really great qualifying that day, but could not back it up in the race. Almost did until the 2nd half, but we're not even in the 2nd half of this race, and Polo God has had trouble twice. First, the collision with Jackson. Second, the rear wing going gone and spinning down at turn 8. Penguin and Wavy also joined Jake Bandy, Lennon in the pit lane, and it's come out behind Jake Bandy and Mentelke. I really have to wonder, is this a good track for Blue Gagi? Is this just really, in any way, him fixing the issues that he's had with Red Bull? He seems to have a lot more confidence, especially battling the faster car of George right now and the McLaren at the front of this field and hanging on beautifully. But also, I feel like George is in conservation mode quite a bit too, to where he's kind of letting Gagi have a little bit of this. But with that being said, remember, both of them are on the separate tires, so you put that together evenly. I would assume both of them are very similar on pace right now. Zora's out, and that has brought out a safety car. Polo got retired just moments ago, but this has changed the complexion of this race. George gets a free pit stop. Gagi has to avoid hitting the safety car, but George was coming in right as Zora crashed. That's 4 retirements from this race. Wow. Mentelke has got a 3-second time penalty, and Gagi has to let the Ferrari go. Look at this. The Ferrari that's retired, he might get a penalty for. Is he? He's far behind the safety car. What's happened here? Well, nonetheless, Danny got to pit. Red Fire got to pit. He's on mediums. And George got to pit for the hard compound tires, while Blue Gagi gets caught behind the safety car. Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, if you're just joining us, we had a safety car for Zora going out of the race on his own. Polo God right before that actually retired in the pit lane. He picked up rear wing damage after spinning out at turn 8. Both of them retired. The safety car got deployed, and look at this. Blue Goggy being caught behind the safety car is going to mess him up. I don't know if I feel bad or not here, but I'll tell you right now, if he pits, he's going to be back in 9th. If he stays out and waits for the rain period we're supposed to get soon, he could win out big here. But he's got to rely on it turning to intermediate tires. Blue Goggy ducks the pit lane and is in from the lead, giving it up to George Williams. Oh, boy. And Goggy is on the medium tires with red fire, but he does not have the track position. This is one of the tracks you want to have track position at. How soon is rain supposed to come, says Goatley. All right, let me ask the drivers I'm listening in on. Alright, so I've just received word that it still is not saying on how long until rain. It says it's clear for the moment. But as Zora did say in the Twitch chat, this is very true. Rain comes very close to the end. So, yeah. Safety car gone wrong for Red Bull here. Caused by a Red Bull driver. How fitting is that? Well, I could tell you right now, if things continue the way we're at, we might not have an Academy score tonight. I know Zora is in P10, but he will not be scoring points because he did not finish the race. This same thing happened back in Spain. You need to finish the race in order to score points, and a safety car gone wrong for Blue Goggy, who was leading this race in conservation mode, just like George was, but on the hard tires. We're past halfway in this race, and we will be going back to the restart here in just moments' time. George Williams, another drive through the field. Is it going to be 3 weeks in a row from a qualifying ban to take victory? 11 places gained since the start. Look at this, starting outside the top 10, 3 weeks in a row. George Williams leads this restart. And just a reminder, folks, we've got 2 more races to continue out the weekend. China tomorrow in F2, USA in F1 at Texas. George Williams goes into the Casio Triangle to lead this restart here for McLaren. When does he go? When does he put the pedal to the metal? He is waiting, backing everyone up and going now. We're back to green flag racing, and everybody darting out behind. We're almost 4 wide down into turn 1. The question I'm going to raise there is, did anyone pass before the start finish line? Red Fire clears his teammate Lennon. So now the championship protagonists who are here today run 1-2. Except our championship leaders back up to 2nd after the lap 1 troubles. Wavy Knife, Penguin, Goggy, Danny. That's our last 4 cars here, and Goggy needs to start picking off some cars here if he wants to get back to the lead and challenge Red Fire and George. The Haas is losing grip. That's Penguin in front of Goggy. Goggy's got another place. He's up to 7th. 2 places gained from our driver who led at the very start of this race until that safety car screwed him over. Red Fire Tigers going for it the long way around the outside of George. One's in the mediums, one's in the hards. They're pinching and squeezing one another side by side for the lead. Jake Bandy, Len and Wavy, big battle there, but Red Fire inherits the lead. Goggy's got Mintoki now. Goggy was on the inside of Wavy as well. Mintoki goes out very wide, giving up the place. She's going to give it up to her Academy teammate, Danny, and might do the same here with Penguin. But nonetheless, we've got a battle for our lead. Red Fire's on mediums, George is on hards. And if Goggy can get there, it might be a 3-car race here at the front of our field. Zora says Goggy would have got eaten up by George. That may be true, but the thing is, when they pit, remember, if the safety car did not happen, they'd be on opposite tires and not really on any level playing ground. Now with the safety car, they are. George looking to retake the lead. The long way around on Red Fire Tiger. He cannot make the move stick. We've got Blue Goggy and Wavy racing it out. Two rivals of the past. Here comes Goggy trying to get by Wavy. Wavy's got some academy teammates in front of him, so you know he will not make this easy. Neither will Jake Bandy. That's the trouble of trying to pick your way through cars who are in the same academy as those right in front. Goggy sees an opportunity down the inside of Wavy. He goes into the grass and does not make that move stick. Wavy almost is losing touch with the front of this field. He's just off of DRS. Goggy uses some battery right there, while Wavy is maybe trying to look to conserve some. He's on 35%. Here's Danny also in the thick of things trying to get through. Similar to Spain, we've got 9 cars left in this race, so big points on offer for the teams like Sauber, Haas, even put Aston in the equation as well. Here we go for the move. Goggy, who led this race earlier on, got hampered by the safety car. He's gone from 9th to 5th on the opening 2 laps of this restart. Can he hang it in the 130R? Wavy is there. Goggy does hang on over Wavy. 2 rivals of the past racing each other with much more respect than this race 2 seasons prior. And it looks like Red Fire Tiger has almost dispatched George out of DRS. Zora, believing Goggy has this in the bag on the Twitch chat. We'll find out. Nonetheless, Penguin makes the move on Mintucky. This is really just a battle for 8th and 9th here, unless anyone in front has trouble. This is what it's going to be with them two. Jake Bandy, full-time Tier 3 driver right now, runs 4th. That's Goggy's next target here. If Goggy can get there, he might be fighting with Red Fire and George for the victory. Nonetheless, the podium after being at the back of the field from the safety car is great stuff. It was this race on lap 1, 2 seasons ago, where he fell to the back of the field after a lap 1 incident with Wavy and started overtaking cars through the whole field. He got up to 3rd and finished there. Now the question gets raised, can he get back to 3rd this time around and maybe 2 spots better? This man has had almost 10 podiums across all tiers. This tier specifically, he's had 5. The most without a win in RPL Tier 2 would, in fact, come from Mally 41 at 6. But he's won in RPL F1 cars. Goggy hasn't. Goggy's only won in F2. At the front of this field, George Up Williams is pressurizing Red Fire. Goggy's pressurizing Jake Bandy. Here we go. Jake Bandy is just a nose ahead, but almost clips the Mercedes. So Goggy is really putting the pressure on the McLaren. It's not the McLaren going for the lead, but it's one step close to that. Look at that. The fastest lap goes to him. George sits behind, but no longer does so. To the lead. George Up Williams on lap 19 is out in front. Wavy has Danny behind him. Mintucky has Penguin in her sights, and Goggy is right on the back of the McLaren. This is a 5-car fight for the victory, but Goggy wants to get through. He sees an opportunity right here in the McLaren. Oh, he just didn't put his nose in there, and if he did, it could have been disaster. Now here he goes for it on Jake Bandy around the outside. He almost had a mistake. That happened to Jackson Traeger, happened earlier on with him. Almost clipping the side of the McLaren, but we got yellow flags. That is for Penguin here at the back of the field. Maybe Mintucky involved too, but up at the front, we got Blue Goggy still trying to get past the McLaren. The McLaren of Jake Bandy, the full-time Tier 3 driver, reserving for the team tonight to help them in the constructors, is not making this easy. Remember, George Up Williams is trying to go from worst to first 2 weeks in a row, and right now is doing a great job. Into 130R. Goggy is still trailing the McLaren. Look at this. Toe-to-toe. Dive bomb incoming. Down the inside. Side by side. Wheel banging the 2R. Now, Goggy is out ahead and up to 4th. He's got 1 more place to the podium, 3 to the lead, and speaking of the lead, Red Fire Tiger retakes it on lap 20. Red Fire Tiger, similar to Goggy, is on the medium compound tires, now making a 7-horse race at the front of this field. Danny and Wavy have caught up. Wavy is ahead of Danny now. Like I said, it was this race 2 seasons ago. Gagi made his debut with Red Bull and got his first Tier 2 podium in a long while. He has never won in Tier 2. He's had 5 podiums. And every time he's raced with the main Red Bull team, he's had consistency issues. You know who's helped him keep confidence? Cookie, the team principal. He said, I trust you. I know what you're capable of, but you need to show it more often. He didn't start showing it, and he got demoted to V-Carb. But with an opportunity arising from main drivers not showing up to the Red Bull team, it's allowed him to have an opportunity once again with this team, just like he did in Japan, technically as a reserve. Oh, Jake Bandy with a big moment. He'll lose 5th place and maybe 6th. But for Gagi's case, Danny gets by Jake Bandy. But for Gagi's case, he had a chance in Monza last week, and he didn't have the best of qualifyings. He didn't make the most of it. He finished back in the pack, and he said, I got wrecked 3 times that race. What do you expect me to do? He got put back here after leading the race, and the safety car coming out at the wrong time. Right now, he's back in hopes of having a chance at our race victory for what could be a first time. Lennon hasn't won since Mexico, back a few seasons prior. He's got a chance for the victory too, with his teammate up in front and George up in front. We've got 7 laps remaining, and this train is kind of broken away from the ones behind of Danny, Wavy, and Bandy. Really wondering why I keep lagging out of the party every time I stream alone. Opportunity. Looks like it's arising here between Gagi, Lennon, George, and Red Fire. But nonetheless, here is Gagi right behind Lennon and using battery. Is he using too much battery? Look at the ones in front of him in this train. 67%. George on 90, Red Fire on 47. Do we see a move in the Casio triangle? No, we do not. However, it's a 4-horse race up here with 2 Merc cars, 1 Red Bull car, 1 Alpine/McLaren Academy car. The batteries are being turned on. George re-inherits the lead of this race on lap 22. George is in front. Danny is ahead of Wavy now for 5th place. The second train behind these guys, and Blue Gagi still cannot get by Lennon, who seems to be conserving quite a bit of battery. Just like last week in Monza, it's a 4-horse race at the front of the field. And could we be seeing the same thing happen with George and Red Fire, just like last week, where George took it on the last lap and got the victory? Look at this. Gagi hounding the back of Lennon right here. He's got to get this move done if he wants to see a chance at Red Fire and George for the victory. You see in the background, Danny, Weavin and Bobbin trying to break the slipstream in the background with that battle for P5. If anything arises here in the top 4, maybe one of those guys in the second train can take advantage. But right now, Gagi's using all the battery he can to catch back up and play catch up. Red Fire's boosting. Red Fire's trying to get closer to George. No one makes a move this time up at the front. But Gagi is just losing opportunities to get by Lennon, who he hits the back of right there. Lennon went into none right there, and now we might see Gagi try and get desperate. We've seen it happen before. He's got to be careful with this. And speaking of desperate, Red Fire almost made a move on George right there, getting very close to the back of the McLaren. George is saving so much ERS, Zora says. Well, that is correct. Look at this, 98% in the battery. George is doing a great job in conservation mode. He is trying to go for Tier 2 win number 8 tonight. He would tie Reese, Dainty, and Tadpole for 4th all time. And it would actually be the first time in George's Tier 2 career that he win 3 in a row. Last week was the first time he won back-to-back races. And in fact, for George's case too, we've only had 3 in a row happen in Tier 2, 6 or more, well, 6 times, excuse me. This would be super big. Look at this train, just under 7/10. Goggy is trying to go for a move on Lennon, waiting and almost clipping the back of their Merc. Now he cuts the corner. That will be a track limit warning to the Red Bull. But for our lead, on lap 24, Red Fire won't stay behind much longer. Here he goes. Does the teammate go with him? Red Fire is gone. Red Fire leads this race once more. And he'll try to save ERS over George now. Torn Penguin, he pits. He'll probably go for the fastest lap. Now, Blue Goggy may have a chance to get Lennon here with Red Fire in front, who's got no battery to spare. Look at George now, in conservation mode as well. Just like Monza, this might get crazy, and the fact of the matter is it's harder to pass around here than it is at Monza. Just remember, folks, Red Fire Tiger leading this race, he extends the championship lead. If George wins this race, that championship lead will come down a bit in comparison with those two. That's why it's so crucial for Red Fire to extend that gap as the next 4 races arise. We got Singapore, Imola, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi coming up. Red Fire needs to really do all he can, because coming up soon will be the races where George does not have a qualifying ban. As he said, he'll be a free man. And he definitely will be. Zora says Goggy cannot get impatient, and I can't agree with you anymore. He really can't, but he has to make this move on Lennon. When the opportunity is there, you take it. Everybody backing off right here, just kind of playing the waiting game here as Red Fire leads. Goggy needs to save ERS. I see comments in Twitch chat about that. Yeah, yep. Well, we'll see. We'll see if he does tend to save some ERS. George is closing in. He's there, and he's not going to make the move. He's just going to stay behind and save battery, because look at this. Red Fire is continuing to waste his battery. Lennon is just barely ahead of the Red Bull. I think if Goggy gets there to Lennon and gets ahead, I'm not going to say it's game over for George, but that's more troubling than actually having Lennon behind you. Because Lennon could have went for it there in a turn 1. He didn't. I don't think he had enough ERS to. And in fact, you have someone on the medium tires. But the only thing that I can use to counter that argument is how much are the medium tires wearing? George's best thing about him right now is his ERS management. 99% here. Look at this. 1.5 Danny is to this train. 1.3. All those guys backing each other up is causing Danny in this train to catch. But none of them have any ERS to spare. "14 viewers on their feet waiting for this to end and waiting to see who comes out in front at this Japanese Grand Prix. George Alp Williams into 130R is not close enough. You're right on board with Goggy, who sees this happening right in front of him. Does he get close enough to make a move on any of the Mercedes? Does any of these drivers have moments? Lennon did right there. Lennon getting pushed now on the back. This is going to get tight into turn 1 if these two get close, but they don't. George is still staying behind, waiting for a last lap dash here next time by. Similar to Kimi and Alonso back in 2005. Wavy and Jake Bandy trade spots for P6 in this race. Blue Goggy is right all over the Mercedes driver. And in fact, they're similar in ERS, but Red Fire Tiger has also saved his battery too. Remember, Red Fire Tiger had an incident happen on lap 1 of this race. He went off with Danny. I really wonder, will that see the stewards room? But nonetheless, he's trying to make the recovery drive to win. George is also trying to make the recovery drive from starting last. Penguin takes over the fastest lap, and I saw Red Fire start to slow down. Do we see the DRS mind game start like they did last week in the middle sector? Here comes Blue Goggy around the outside of the Merc. He cannot get this move done. The DRS detection point starts right after 130R. Do we see Red Fire back off and try to get the DRS here on George? He's using battery to defend instead. In fact, here we go. On to the final lap. Danny has caught up. He's the 5th car in this train now. This could be the difference with Red Fire extending the championship lead or losing out a bit to George. 1 lap to go. It's come down to lap 27 here. And everybody is going to start to turn on the overtake. George waits. And he is still waiting to turn on the battery. George is behind Red Fire. Once again still. There's no move made into turn 1. But there is behind. Jake Bandy is side by side with Wavy. Both McLarens could be getting top 6 finishes here. And Blue Gagi has to make this move on Lennon. If those top 2 crash, it would be Lennon taking advantage, not Gagi in the Red Bull. Here we go. We got some batteries being turned on. George is going for it. Around the outside into the Degnas. Side by side. Whoa. Mintoki stole the fastest lap there. 5 cars are so close. And here goes the moves. Gagi's on the inside and almost comes to collision with the Merc. It's all happening behind our leaders. This could get very interesting down at 130R. George is there, but he goes a bit wide. He's got less DRS than Red Fire, and there's no DRS zone here. It's going to come down to the slipstream. To 130R we go. One last time. George is there. Can he complete the mission of worst to first? Can Red Fire come back from spinning on lap 1? Here we go. Dive bomb. It's a contact. Red Fire's off, and Red Fire kept it. From spinning on lap 1 to winning, Red Fire extends the championship lead as he wins in Japan. George is second. He comes up 1 spot short. Lennon is third. Gagi is fourth, missing out on the podium. And Danny finishes 5th. The top 5 were under 9/10 there at the end. Jake Bandy, Wavy, Mintoki will finish 8th, and Penguin will finish 9th. To round out our points. Wowzies. Red Fire gets a 2nd win on the season and extends the championship lead. But did he gain an advantage running wide there at the Casio Triangle? Did George's dive bomb affect anything? Will Lennon be rewarded with the win in the steward's room? Will George be rewarded with the win? Will Red Fire get reported? Lots of questions are going to be asked. Oh boy, what a chaotic race. Red Fire Tiger gets his 2nd win. In RPL Tier 2. And when both Red Fire and Mercedes win, seems to be that both of them are on the podiums together. Red Fire celebrates. George almost completed the mission 3 weeks in a row, almost getting 3 consecutive wins, but came up 1 spot short. Here are your final results. I am going to give the driver of the day to Red Fire Tiger. He came back from spinning on lap 1. And was basically plumb last. George, I would give my 2nd contender to, and probably Blue Gaki too, my 3rd contender. He ran very well today, and maybe could have got the win. I don't know. Got Red Fire, George, Lennon, Gagi, Danny, our top 5. Lennon, it's a return to the podium for him. Congrats to him on that one. It's his first podium since season 11. George is still there in championship contention. Jake Bandy, Wavy, Mintoki, Penguin, and Zora are our top 10. Zora did not get any points due to DNFing. We lost 4 drivers. That was Zora, Polo, Trat, and there was one more. Jackson Traeger. And I'm sure there'll be some upset drivers. I'm listening on some of the drivers right now, and I could hear Gagi not too happy about when the safety car came out. Yeah, if that safety car did not come out when it did, we wouldn't even been talking about Red Fire Tiger having a chance at victory. he'd probably have a chance at a podium, but that safety car did help, and it really helped George more than anybody, but he didn't even get the win after all was said and done. Gagi was one who maybe could have won today. I think this was actually the first race in RPL. I mean, take Vegas out of contention for F2 for a moment. This is probably the first race he had an actual chance to win, and it didn't happen, but only just by the timing of the safety car. Thank you guys in the Twitch chat. Yeah, I mean, if he got through the cars a bit quicker, maybe he could have. I don't know. When you get to the front, you're just stuck in a DRS train, and that's the tricky part for sure. He tried to make moves, but he could not capitalize fully and played the smart game. He didn't want to crash his competitors. You saw he was a little bit hesitant to overtake Jake Bandy, and he did the same with Lennon as well, which probably was a smart move. You don't want to end up in a crash. And George, that was ballsy, trying to make a move down at 130, not 130R, Degna 1. That was close. Will anything be submitted in the storage room? That will now become the question. But nonetheless, we had a first-time pole sitter tonight, and we had a returning podium driver in Lennon. And it's his first in season 11. I think it was maybe Canada, that race that he was in the podium last. Yes, Canada. And that was the race that the victory slipped away from him, and he was P3. Nonetheless, folks, we've got more racing to continue throughout the weekend. Do not miss the action. I'm going to have a long night. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not going to be home for the next 7 hours. So if you want to give me any congrats like I see in the Twitch chat for comms, or any inside info like I always seem to get as a commentator, and fun stuff within the league, driver contracts, whatever you want to talk about, I'm probably not gonna see that message, or if I do, I don't think I'll respond right away. But I'll just say right now, I hope I wake up for F2 tomorrow, because our return to China is where things start off for tomorrow's races. 12 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. British Standard Time. And in fact, we were speaking highly of Gagi today, and I want to speak about him one more time before we end off. That was the first race in F2 2 seasons ago. He got his first podium, so I don't know. Not everything's always meant to be, as they say, but that would be nice to see a podium again. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Leo Lund will be racing F2 tomorrow. Can he win an F2 cars just like he has in F1? Lots of questions will be raised there. And then to end off the weekend, we'll have F1 in Texas, where Leo Lund, in fact, can claim the championship, but he has to beat Jack by like 7 places and win the race. So we will find out if that does end up happening. Nonetheless, join us tomorrow for F2 in China, F1 in Texas, or next week we'll be at Singapore for Tier 2. So if you don't join us tomorrow, join us then. I'm your commentator, Ryan Searles, and we are signing off. Have a good night, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this one. We will see you next time for more action of RPL tomorrow with F2 and F1 and Tier 2 next Friday.